Welcome back, Steeler fans, to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Kohlman. You know me as Smith of Smoking on the message boards, joined by Wil Masisak. You know him as Bradshaw to Ben and Korey Karbowsky. Korey 39. Gentlemen, coming off another win. You know, I didn't predict that. The fighting Mike Tomlins has still have a chance at a 500 record. Thought that might end this past week, but it is what it is. Before we even get to that game, let's just talk real quick because we have the Raiders this weekend. And I don't know about y'all, but I have never seen a wilder ending than that Raiders-Patriots game. I mean, what the hell was
that was their Immaculate Reception game. You understand, right? Like if that had been a playoff game, it would be down in lore, just like the Immaculate Reception, and it's on the week of the 50th anniversary. So yeah, that's the wildest play in 50 years for sure.
Yeah, that will be like on the not top 10 of the next 3 freaking decades. Like it's regulation. You're tied. What are you doing? I could not believe that. I was celebrating Christmas a little early with my family this weekend, and I got this notification from my buddy. He's like, "You have got to turn on the TV." And I was like, "Why? What just happened?" And no, that was not the Minnesota Vikings coming back from being down 33 to 0, which I saw them come back and win. Just ridiculous amount of ridiculousness in, week 14 of the NFL, or week 15. Can't remember what week we're in. That's sad. Just so much insane crap from this past weekend. This is the first weekend in NFL history that like 4 teams came back from down 17 to 0 to win ball games. Like, what is going on? This is just incredible time to be a football fan in general.
Can I just say I'm old enough to remember the guy from the Minnesota Vikings. This has got to be late 60s, early 70s, who picked up a fumble and ran the wrong way, like 80 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And his teammates are like trying to stop him. I mean, it was just like, dude, like I feel like sometimes, guys get the ball and they get crazy maybe, but that was a really bizarre outcome. And it reminded me of another thing that's before my time, but there was a famous play in college football in the 50s in the Cotton Bowl, where a player from Alabama came off the sideline and tackled somebody else who was on his way to a touchdown. So he came on the field like during the game and tackled the guy. And when they were like, what were you thinking? What's wrong with you? He said, "I'm sorry, I was just too full of Alabama." So I think that's the thing about Jacoby Myers. He's just too full of New England.
Yeah, I think that's the craziest part about it for a team that's supposed to be so well disciplined and like never like making the big mental mistakes. That might be the biggest mental mistake I've ever seen on a Bill Belichick-led team ever. I mean, I would not want to be Ramondre Stevenson and Jacoby Myers getting talked to by Bill Belichick after that game. Talk about 2 grown-ass men feeling like they're back in 2nd grade, getting cussed out by the principal for breaking the rules or something. I mean, good God. But sorry to get off topic. I just had to get that off my chest.
It was hey, man. It was a wild weekend in the NFL. And as I said to Korey, it was like we played, it was one of the most exciting weekends in history with all these amazing comebacks and finishes, all-time record comeback, all-time record for 17-point comebacks, crazy play with the Raiders. The Steelers played the most boring game by far of any game on the weekend. Doubt. We got to watch that.
No doubt. Let's go ahead and dive into our recap here. I mean, yeah, that's about as boring can get. I mean, I think the 2 nice things that we did notice, is we were able to run the ball on a pretty good defense for the most part. Again, scored on our first 2 drives. I mean, shoot, I should have put down some poker money after that. I don't think that's happened since I've been a fan. But just in general, I thought it was nice that we were able to run the ball, 3 rushing touchdowns if you could. With the Mitchell Trubisky thing. What else stood out from you guys this past game?
That Matt Canada's probably going to keep his job, which, it feels like he's done almost nothing to deserve it, because whenever we play a really, really bad team, the offense does enough. We scored on the Bengals, but that's really all I'll give him credit for. And whenever we play a good team, just seems like we get stoned. But it's I'd be surprised at this point if he doesn't keep his job. So that's one thing that really just hasn't been able to get off my mind, just because everyone knows how much I hate Matt Canada. So that's the main thing for me.
How much we all hate
Yeah.
Oh yes, we all
together now.
No, I do agree that that's the big takeaway from this game is it so thoroughly reinforced everything about the way that Mike Tomlin wants to play football, particularly on offense, that, it's like you get these long sustained drives, you get into third and short, and that enables you to keep going and possess the football and score. And, I've been saying it since Sunday. It doesn't seem sustainable to me. Like, it just requires such perfection and execution and no penalties and no mistakes. And yeah, one week you might play an inferior opponent and you might, stay clean. My iPhone watch is talking. It's like one week, 1 or 2 weeks that might work fine for you, but in the long run, it just makes you susceptible to you have to convert all those third downs. That means you got to be so consistent. You can't have a holding penalty. You can't have pre-snap penalties, etc. Can't have a turnover. And the thing is, if you play a team like Kansas City and you come out with that approach, they've got 2 touchdowns up on the board before you figured out, what's wrong. So that's all. I mean, that's the main takeaway. I've been very encouraged with the run game. Like I said, I've been saying this on the show for 2 or 3 weeks now. When they have now progressed to a point with the offensive line and the tight ends, wide receivers blocking, that when they play against a team who's not very good at defending the run, they are able to put together, some semblance of a run game, even if it's not for a lot of yards per carry. At least it looks sort of functional, like they can keep the ball moving a little bit more than they used to. They're not getting stuffed behind the line of scrimmages, guys, what I'm saying. But, 3.5 yards a carry for Najee Harris, that's, there are people like talking about what a great run game we had and what a great run game Najee Harris had. And it's like, that's not really going to cut it against most teams.
Yeah, as Barry say, the mark is you're always hoping to average 4 yards a carry. That always seems to be the bar set for running backs. If you're not averaging 4 yards a carry, you're not doing a good enough job. So I agree with you there. Other things offensively, welcome to the show, Deontay Johnson. Nice to see you show up. But 10 catches, almost 100 yards. It was nice to see him to catch all of his targets, no drops. It would sure be nice if we got that on a little more consistent basis. I think Trubisky was purposely looking his way. There was some talk throughout the week that, Trubisky wasn't finding Deontay enough. Just in general this year, the ball hasn't been finding Deontay enough. But it was nice to see him step up and actually do something with his targets for a change. What are your guys' thoughts on him? And kind of building off what you just said, with, this year we're finding out more about the run game. Do you think we can find out more about the passing game in year 2 of Matt Canada's offense, or no?
Who's the quarterback going to be? I think Mitch Trubisky is a mediocre quarterback who has advanced enough in his career that he at least understands how to get the ball to places, or he's willing to try to make plays. He's a little bit less afraid of risk. Also, he has less to lose in this situation. It's not like he's got this job and he's not going to give it up. And it's not like no matter what he does, he's not going to win the job. And no matter what he does, he's under contract for next year. He's probably going to be here. So I don't, from that standpoint, it's like he's got just a little bit more risk taking to be able to push the ball downfield. So I probably, you're not going to have that. I suspect when Kenny Pickett comes back in the game that he's probably going to get rid of the ball quicker so that he doesn't take any more big hits outside the pocket. And he's probably going to not threaten as much with that deep intermediate ball where he has to stand in the pocket and hold it. I would say at least for the short term. So I don't know what we're going to learn. I just feel like yes, we learned some stuff about the run game, but I don't think we learned anything that's important for next year going forward. I really don't, because you're basically suffering on the illusion now that those 5 guys that you have playing offensive line are actually good enough because they're doing it against these teams that they're, at least equal to, if not better. So to me, if I want to learn, I want to see them play really good teams and and either get their ass handed to them or be inconsistent or do something really well against them and think to myself, well, okay, you know, like we did this, we did that. I think that the Cincinnati game was maybe, I felt better about the run game after that game than I did this one, even though this was like on paper looked a lot better. But that's the thing about learning. It's like, you want to learn against the best, you know, that's why like DVOA and numbers like that are better measurements than the yardage or anything game to game, because it gives you an idea, you know, how you did against that team compared to how other teams did against them. And that, I don't know, I feel like that tells me a little bit more.
Gotcha, Korey. Anything else you want to mention from this past game?
I mean, if anyone but Kenny Pickett was behind quarterback, we weren't going to learn anything. Or behind the center, we weren't going to learn anything. We know what Mitch Trubisky is. He'll probably be back here next year as a backup. I mean, we know that he can beat a bad team if he goes in, which, I mean, I feel like we already knew that as it was. So in the passing aspect, I don't think we learned anything. Two things I want to point out about the rushing attack is that as a team, we averaged 3.5 yards a carry. And for that to be our kind of like, oh, you know, we had a great rushing game this game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty sad. It like, yeah, like you watched the game and we did move the ball, running the ball, but when it came down to it, we averaged 3.5 yards a carry. And I'm sure you take QB sneaks out, it's closer to 4, but even then, I mean, that's not an insane average or anything. That's below average. So that's one thing I wanted to point out, that even though, you know, it seems like we had a good rushing game, it was a good rushing game for our standards, not a good rushing game for the NFL standards. Second thing is we know going into next year, James Daniels will be here. Chukwuma Okorafor will be here. Mason Cole will be here. The two guys we don't know if they're going to get benched or not, and who we're going to bring in is left tackle Dan Moore and left guard Kevin Dotson. Both have been kind of turnstiles in the pass protection. And for their flaws, they are good run blockers. They do move people. They do displace D linemen and double teams, and they get to backers. It's just communication and pass pro is just very lacking with those two. So I say we almost don't even learn much about the rush attack, because two of our better run blockers are likely to get replaced. So there's going to be a whole new period of trying to get used to each other and, you know, getting calls down and young guys, because I don't really see us bringing in free agents. I'd see us much more likely to upgrade in the draft. So we're going to have young guys replacing two solid run blockers. So I'm not even sure how much that tells you, just because many of those runs sprung off the left side.
Yep.
Yeah, very good point. Well, one last thing I'll kind of bring up. I thought the defense did a very good job, you know, for, you know, a Carolina running attack that was supposed to be pretty vaunted. I think we only gave up like 30 yards on a bunch of carries. So, I mean, kudos to the front seven, doing a good job. Hayward looked like he had a little more energy this week. I'm not sure where that came from, but, you know, he looked good. Alex Highsmith had a big game coming back to Charlotte. Had some big time plays to force Carolina into some disadvantage situations. TJ Watt looked a little bit better this week. I think it was just more of a better matchup there. But really, the thing that sticks out to me is our secondary still sucks. Like I know we, you know, on the last episode we said, you know, upgrading the front seven, you know, could be a big priority. But good Lord, we got to upgrade the secondary too, because I mean, our guys are just getting beat left and right. I hate to say it. I mean, I know James Pierre, there was a miscommunication on the big throw down the left sideline to DJ Moore, you know, bad eye discipline there. But just in general, we're getting beat over the top and we're not staying with guys like we should. So, I mean.
And Jeremy, that's not a juggernaut. That's the 30th ranked passing game in the NFL.
Right. Like, you know, we let Sam freaking Darnold carve us up for, you know, a decent majority of the game until, you know, defense got a little stiffer late in the game. Didn't allow some of the easier stuff, you know, pass rush more than anything though, made the back end's job much easier. So just
imagine Mitch Trubisky as the quarterback of the Carolina Panthers next year. Like,
don't let Carolina Panthers fans imagine that.
I'm just saying what are they like? They're in contention for the division. in that division.
Yeah, they're going to be out of range to draft, probably the guys that are going to be able to be, start and probably impact day one. Stroud will be gone, Young will be gone, and I think Levis will be gone too. So, I mean, especially with the, Korey, you mentioned it before we jumped on here, all these quarterbacks sticking around the NCAA for NLI deals, and I'm not exactly sure what else, but this is going to be a very bare quarterback class in the end of it. So very good points from both of you. Just it'll be interesting to see how this offseason shakes out in general. But any other things we want to talk about from this Carolina game before we move on to the Raiders matchup this week?
I want Mark Robinson to start next year.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because Miles Jack was in and out of the game, I think, with I think it was
he didn't play.
Injury, if I remember correctly.
No, he didn't play. So but Mark Robinson had only 7 plays in that game, by the way. But he made a lot of friends in the 7 plays he was in.
Yeah. So last week we talked about kind of having a alpha out there on defense. Boy, you kind of get the sense that Mark Robinson kind of waiting in the wings. Yeah, I think he might get a real legit chance to be a much bigger role player, maybe even a starter next year, depending on how the roster shakes out. But I mean, he's got a lot of exciting upside, had a great preseason. It was nice to see him follow it up in game time action. Just a complete wrecking ball out there. I can't remember what Panthers offensive lineman, but he got a little bit happy on a play where he was supposed to go tackle a running back and just tackled some Panthers.
I don't even know if tackle's the right word.
He bent him,
hit him in his chest and took him 2 yards into the backfield.
Yeah, so
the guy kind of crumpled.
Right, but just nice to see that type of fire and physicality that we have not.
It just shows you that the linebackers the Steelers have are so tentative about
timid is the word.
It's just like, you got to just go 100 miles an hour. And in a way, like, I'd respect them more if they did that and missed tackles. Like, that was the thing with Shazier, especially in the first couple of years, was like,
overran a lot,
going a million miles an hour and missed things. But it's like, at least you're screwing up the timing and messing up the play or knocking a guy down. But if you're just passive, man, in the NFL as a linebacker, that doesn't play very well for very long.
And one thing I wanted to say too is, I mean, we all remember the play where Spillane got just outran on. It was just a simple up and out. Yeah, it was just a simple up and out. And Hubbard is not a fast guy by any means. But what caught my eye, this hasn't been a clip that's highlighted anywhere, but in one of Robinson's 7 snaps, he sat back there and it was the same exact route. I mean, it was hip to hip with him. It was the same route, same exact play. Robinson covered it. Spillane didn't. So it's the end of the season. I mean, you would think, I know the Steelers won't do it. If we had one more loss, maybe we just go out and let some of these young guys play.
Right.
But I doubt we do it, but that would be at least nice to see. I mean, I don't, especially with Jack still kind of being injured, and I don't think Spillane's done much to warrant being on the field all year. I would love for Robinson to get more than 7 snaps this upcoming game, but I doubt it's going to happen.
Couldn't agree more. And it's like, this is what I mean by, like, are you rooting for them to lose? No, but I would say I'd much rather that they lose playing young guys and guys that they want to find out something about them about this year and going into next year and whatever, rather than playing a guy like Miles Jack, who's not even going to be here in 2 years. Like, why worry about what Miles Jack is doing? Like, it's great that he's there for some leadership and in practice to help the new guys figure out what to do. But like those guys are necessary, but I don't think that means you have to play them down the stretch in meaningless games or games that it's not really benefiting you that much to win. So that's all I'm saying. I would much rather see Mark Robinson make mistakes than watch guys be super passive playing linebacker for the Steelers. It just, I don't know. Like, it hurts to see passive linebacker play in black and gold. It really does.
Yeah, it's interesting now that I think about it. Miles Jack is actually the perfect mentor for Mark Robinson because, they are both these great athletes that were used on both sides of the ball, when they were in college. Miles Jack was a linebacker and a running back at UCLA. They used him all over the place, and then Mark Robinson, was a I think he was a scholarship running back at like Presbyterian, had to walk on and then to like Southwest Missouri. And then he had to walk on to Ole Miss, who then saw him play like a few times on special teams. And they were like, screw it, you got to play linebacker for us, man. They ended up starting 9 games. So, I mean, it in a sense, I don't think Mark Robinson can learn from anyone better than that, because there's someone in front of him that went through the exact same transition. So the most important thing, arrow is pointing up for Mark Robinson. Be fun to watch that kid develop as we go into the future here. But let's hit into the rate.
I'd love a whole roster of guys like Mark Robinson. Like that would make me so happy. I think that's the fact. Like Mark Robinson and Jalen Warren, those cats can play for me.
I think we touched on this last week. It feels like we have no guys who are really like enforcers. Like Jalen Warren was the guy, like you mentioned, he's probably one of the hardest hitters on the team, and he's a damn running back in pass protection. Right. And he knocks guys to the ground more than anyone else. So like, it's just that's kind of like the guys that we'd like to target in the draft, I feel, and in free agency, which those guys usually don't hit free agency because they're fan favorites. But just guys that can set a tone. Like, I mean, Shazier would always set a tone. Timmons, Vince Williams, Ryan Clark, even fucking Mike Mitchell. I mean, that dude couldn't cover couldn't guard his own shadow, but receivers coming over the middle didn't want to catch it. They were on a swivel. So
100%. Although that's been sort of legislated out of the league a little bit. But yes, it's great. That's no argument for me.
Yeah.
By the way, a nickel for either one of you can name the NFL player from Presbyterian College where Mark Robinson was a running back.
Name one of them.
There's only one that I know of.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, I thought there's no way there's more than one.
Oof.
Khalif Raymond.
No, Justin Bethel, cornerback for the Dolphins.
Oh, shoot. You're right. I remember him coming out, but boy, that was a long time ago now.
Well, I mean, in NFL terms, yeah, but it's 2012. So, yeah, he's been in the league 10 years, I think. He's still in the league, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy. I feel like I just remember watching him. But anyway, let's get to the Raiders matchup here.
Right on.
Good matchups to watch this week. I'll start out with the most glaring and obvious one. Chandler Jones, meet Dan Moore. Max Crosby, meet Okorafor. Those are the two matchups, that'll make or break this game this week. Because I think Steelers have pretty good matchups all over the board, but not there. Those two are hell on wheels. Chandler Jones being the crafty vet that he is. He's really turned in to having a nice season here. You started out slow, but he's really started making an impact more lately. And then Mad Max, I know you were very high on him coming out of Eastern Michigan. I liked him as well. Just two guys that are hell on wheels rushing the passer. So Kenny Pickett, get the ball out quick, because those guys are coming every single play. And the effort for Max Crosby alone is, TJ Watt-esque. You don't find those guys many places. So that's my matchup to watch out for this week. Those two better be fantastic with their technique in positioning, or Kenny Pickett will feel it.
I want to backpack off that just because I had both those written down too. And I feel like it can't be understated how critical of a matchup this is. One thing about Crosby is, I think, again, we've mentioned it in one of the weeks prior. I mean, that dude has not gotten the love he deserves. He is, week in and week out, one of the most dominant defensive players on the field across the NFL. I mean, like you said, hell on wheels. He is relentless. And I don't like the matchup. Chucks can at least put up a fight against him. I am terrified for Chandler Jones versus Dan Moore. I mean, Chandler Jones is everything Dan Moore does not do good against. He's long, he's powerful. I mean, a good edge rusher. He's long, he's powerful. But, I mean, that ghost rush that Chandler Jones has patented down, that's going to murder Dan Moore. The worst part about Dan Moore's game are his hands. Like, his punch is just inconsistent. If you see him get beat, it's probably that he got his hands swiped. Chandler Jones is one of the greatest edge rushers ever when it comes to just making you completely whiff on your hands with his ghost rush and a swipe. So that's going to be huge. The next thing that I had, getting off Jeremy's topic, is Josh Jacobs versus our linebackers. The Raiders will run the ball. They are not afraid to run the ball if they're getting stopped. They're not afraid to run the ball. when they're down, they will continuously hand the ball off to Josh Jacobs, even though if you look at their O-line, it's not impressive at all on paper. And you watch the games, it's not impressive that much. But if you just keep doing something and you have a hard runner like Josh Jacobs, something's going to give. So, like I said, Josh Jacobs is a tough runner. You're going to need linebackers that are going to hit him, and they're going to need to stop him and make him fall backwards. Otherwise, it could be a long day where they just churn out 4 and 5 yard gains and walk down the field. And with how we're going to call the game, we can't really afford to let that happen because we're going to be trying to play close, 14-17, field goal games. So that's going to be critical if we want to win this.
Wow. Yeah. Boy. Well, let me start with something because I've been thinking about it, so I can take it off my chest. I'm the only one of the three of us old enough to remember the Immaculate Reception game. I like most people in Pittsburgh was not able to watch the game live, and probably something that's colored with the rest of my life. I hate finding out the results about games before I watch them, like with so much of a passion that I've pretty much created this systems and environments around myself that if I can't watch the game live, I will go to great lengths to not pay attention to anything, to not find out the answer. And I think it originates with the fact that this game was, everyone heard, you watch the news on 6 p.m. news on New Year's Eve night or Christmas Eve night, they said the Steelers won. And like, wow, that's really, really great. And they played the game on tape delay the next day. Imagine a world where the Steelers game was not live.
Wow.
But they played a tape delay the next morning. That's the earliest they were allowed to replay it. And I remember watching the game, sitting at my kitchen table, the little TV, and thinking, they said the Steelers won. But I must have been a mistake. I must have misheard what they said because there's 13 seconds or whatever left in the game, and I'm like, there's no way there. I mean, little me, I'm like 9 or 10 years old. Like I can't believe they're gonna, they must have been a mistake. They lost this game. So even with knowing what happened, and even with the tape delay and everything else, when the play happened, it was still like almost as good as watching James Harrison won for 100 yards, in the Super Bowl, and me getting so excited that my dog bit me. Like that's the number one most exciting Steelers moment of my life. But the Immaculate Reception, even on tape delay the next day, even knowing what happened, was like that because it was just that was nuts, man. Like it was the Chandler Jones thing from Sunday times like 1,000. So yeah, that was pretty cool. That was like one of those times where you feel like you as a fan are magic because the teams that you root for, stuff like that happens to you. And that the next decade was sort of like that for me. So anyway, I just want to say all that. About this week's matchup, it's going to be cold. The matchup for me is the Raiders offense against the Elements. It's supposed to be wind chill in the minuses.
-5, if I remember correctly. I think this is the first time there have been 7 outdoor NFL games that have been projected to be single digits or lower.
Yeah, some of those ones in the Midwest, I think, are even going to be worse, right?
Yeah, we are expecting a hell of a storm to roll through the Midwest. I mean, it's supposed to be a 0 on like Thursday night, Friday, and we are supposed to be getting 10 inches. So it could be insane, for some of these teams that are going to be playing outdoors in the Midwest. So just in general, it sounds like, the whole country is going to be experiencing one hell of a storm this week. So the Elements are definitely going to be a factor, no doubt. Will, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So, to me, it's like if the Steelers were a team that was really good at stopping the run, like against a good team who can really run it. Like that's the thing about the Raiders. They can run it, like I don't love Josh Jacobs, but I think the one thing that team does well is run the football. So I feel like, I sense a worry that the Steelers are going to be sort of preoccupied with trying to stop the run on a day when the Elements are bad. And then once you overcommit to that, then you got a guy like Devontae Adams or Darren Waller that can make you pay for that attention on the run in the middle. So I'm curious to see how that will go. On the other hand, the Raiders defense is, there's the second matchup, is the Raiders defense in general against the Steelers. If you thought Carolina's defense could make the Steelers offense look competent, the Raiders they're worse, So I just feel like that's been their downfall this year, is that mostly they have, been average offensively, up and down a little bit, but their defense has really let them down. So I feel like it's an interesting game. It's like the elements are going to make it old time football. The 50th anniversary is going to sort of give us all the vibes of like an old time football game. And, it'll be interesting to see which team. I mean, I'll give you, when we pick the game, I'll give you my sense about what I think, which team is maybe more suited to that. But yeah, it's like, I don't think this is a game. I think take the under is what I'm really trying to say. Although the conditions were the same last year with the Browns and Steelers, and they scored 40 points, So.
Yeah, true. Very true.
Same weather. That was the last time that there was this kind of weather for the Steelers game.
Gotcha. Yeah. One thing, you mentioned how cold it's going to be, be interesting to see what the wind is. Because if the wind is up, I don't trust Kenny Pickett, trying to fit it into places. We've talked about here, on this podcast several times where, he does not have like elite arm strength. So he's got to be, very technically sound to make sure he's got tight spirals, putting everything he has into his throws, because anything that hangs or, just for half a second, there's potential for a defender to get their hands on a ball or, pick it off or any of that. So, I mean, like you said, the elements are huge this week. I want another matchup I'll throw out there real quick. And I think it's one of the most obvious ones out there is Davante Adams versus anyone he lines up against. That man's just downright terrifying, and they've really started to use him over the second half of the year. Start of the year, Raiders were pretty frustrated. They didn't know what was going on. Carr couldn't find Adams, the production wasn't there. That has not been the case, since about 5 weeks ago. He has been on a tear ever since. So, I mean, I think there's a chance, that he has a big day, depending on, who's lining up from him, how the Steelers, play coverage towards him, whether we play a safety over top, who's on him underneath, that type of stuff. So Davante Adams, another big name to watch. Some other matchups, guys, or?
No, I mean, you covered it when you said, or Will covered it when he said their whole defense. It's outside of Crosby and Jones, there's not many players.
Their edge rush is elite. And the fact that their defense is that bad, despite that elite edge rush, I think tells you something about how much the edge rush and the rest of the defense have to work together for that to be important. It's like if you just have really great edge rushers, it's not enough to win football games consistently, because they'll get the ball, they'll hurt you in the pass game before those pass rushers can get there.
Right.
I will say, if Jerry Tillery is on the field, we should run directly towards him. He's somewhat of a joke in the NFL community, at least on Twitter, where every time someone pops a big play against, it was the Chargers, now it's the Raiders, it's probably because they ran straight towards Jerry Tillery and he started at the 3 tech and then in the opposite 5 tech. So that's just one more matchup. Any of our O linemen, I think you could put in who's one of our bad guys, Trent Scott Jr. You could throw Trent Scott Jr. in on him and he'll take him for a ride. So
gotcha. In retrospect, our interior of our offensive line has got to do, I mean, they've got to be able to capitalize, against Jerry Tillery. I couldn't believe Andrew Billings still plays in this league. I honestly didn't know he still played, and that was just drove me crazy. I couldn't
Where'd you
believe
have
that
him
guy's still around.
Jeremy, where'd you have him in your rankings that year he came out?
Oh, I mean, I loved him. I mean, because I saw him as like, the next coming of Casey Hampton. I had him as I'll be honest, he's a guy I was completely wrong about, but I mean, I had a first round grade on him just because he was so brutal, against everyone he lined up against in college. I had him as one of those defensive tackles that can come in and change a game, and he never had that. I think a little of that was, he had a chronic knee injury, and I think it's plagued him his entire career. But I had him super high.
Yeah.
So, but I just couldn't believe that, just because he's had such a cast off type of career, so to say.
But it's just, they're one of those teams where if you take like, a rounded average NFL defense, I think they have two starters, and it's Crosby and Jones. I'm not sure a single other one of those guys should be starting on even an average NFL defense.
I don't know about that.
Maybe Trayvon Moehrig.
Yeah, I was about to say that's my boy still.
You can argue for Nate Hobbs, but
yeah,
everyone else is just not.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I was just about ready to go through a few names, but you know what, that covers it.
Well, look, they're the 31st ranked pass defense with like legitimately 2 either all pros or like right at almost at that level edge rushers. So just imagine how bad the rest of the team has to be.
Yeah, that sums it all up. Will that sums it.
And I'm not even joking. I bet you their rush defense, since they added Jerry Tillery, is below 28.
Yeah.
So like he's far and away the worst rush defender in the league.
Yeah, Football Outsider says 22, but they are trending at 31.
Yes. See, I know
good.
football.
Good guess.
But so while we're still on this topic real quick, I'll kind of run through some of the early injury reports from this week. Now, let it do be known that neither the Raiders or Steelers practiced today, because as we're playing on Saturday, they did not practice today. With a lot of games happening on Saturday this week instead of Sunday, be sure to set your fancy lineups, but that's not the point of this show. Just FYI. Because I definitely almost forgot to do that this past week. But as far as the Raiders injuries go, Alex Bars, who starts, Dylan Parham, who starts, would have projected them to not practice today. They are dealing with some nicks and bruises, so if they don't play, that does make Las Vegas's job running the ball a lot tougher.
Is Dylan Parham playing left guard or right guard for them?
Let me double check on that.
I believe left guard.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's
guard.
that's the matchup with Cam Hayward. I was going to mention that earlier.
Yep.
And he's a bit undersized.
Yep. So that would be a big deal.
I love him though. I think Dylan Parham is one of my favorite prospects last year.
Yes, same here. I think down the line he's a center. They need someone at left guard right now. They have a lot of them.
Yeah, I do think he's a center. That's where I was thinking for him, last year. He has that center mentality too. He's a real
yes. Great puller. It actually would open up a lot of teams. They're not a big pin and pull team. They run a lot of red zone with Josh Jacobs, but yeah. I was a big fan with the idea of him on the Steelers with a really good puller at center again.
Yep. We like that.
The only other starter that would have been projected not to practice today would have been Rock Ya-Sin at corner. But we kind of discussed, their secondary is just so damn bad. I'm not sure, even their next man up might be better than him. As far as Pittsburgh goes, it does say that Kenny Pickett would have practiced in full today. He's out of concussion protocol. This past game was more precaution than anything. So it certainly looks like he's trending to play and start. I think they would have said Cameron Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi's would have both had kind of the Wednesday treatment today. Both would not have practiced just for more maintenance days. The one injury the Steelers do have to watch out for, though, is Terrell Edmonds did have a little bit of an issue with a hamstring in this past game versus the Raiders. So it'll be interesting to monitor his progress throughout the week. He was the only Steeler projected not to practice today because of injury. Like I said, Ogunjobi and Hayward were more maintenance from what this report on Twitter says. So other than that, Steelers are relatively healthy, so are the Raiders for the most part. So both teams should be pretty close to full strength, if I had to guess, going into this weekend. So with that being said, there are some other NFL games this weekend, some big time playoff matchups really this week. that really will impact, seedings and who's going to be having some home field advantage. Well, let's start off right now. The New York Giants are headed to Minnesota. Minnesota is a 3.5-point favorite. The Giants, after a big win over the Commanders last week, pretty much control their own destiny now as far as making the playoffs. They have a very high probability of making it as long as they win 2 of their next 3. They look pretty solid to take over one of the last wild card spots. I'll start off with this one. I like Minnesota here. Don't get me wrong. I love the Giants. I love what Dable's been able to do. They've been able to stay with teams and all that, but don't kid yourselves. This is going to be, a good game. I think Minnesota lucked out more than anything this past week. I think we've said on the show a few times, they are the scariest, like 11-4, 10-4, or 11-3. I can't even remember what the record is right now, but they've won so many close games. Their record could easily be just hovering above 500 right now. So I expect this to be a game. I expect Minnesota to win and cover, though. Korey, let's go to you next. What are your thoughts on this one?
You know what? I'm going to pick against the Vikings for like the 8th time this year. And they only have 3 losses, so that lets you know how I'm doing. But I just like, I like what the Giants did last week with their running game. It seems like Saquon's really coming into his own right now. I say it every time. I don't think the Vikings are that good. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to confess it all year. I think they're kind of like the Steelers when we were 11-0 or 12-0, and it was just clear that team really wasn't that good. I think the Vikings are kind of trending up. They've really got something to play for. Not saying the Vikings don't, but Vikings are almost in do or die right now. And I think they're going to make it tough on Kirk Cousins. They're going to do what they do. They play press man. Justin Jefferson's going to eat it up, but it's just going to be on Kirk Cousins to deliver it. And I think I like the idea of New York's rushing attack over Kirk Cousins beating press man for an entire game, because there will be double teams set that way. So I think I'm going to go with the Giants in a narrow win. And yeah, I'm going to stay with that.
Well, this is those 2 teams that we agreed were the paper tigers of the first half of the season playing each other. So something has to give. I think take Kirk Cousins, start Kirk Cousins in fantasy, and pick the Giants to win, and you'll have a good Saturday. I think it is a game where the numbers are going to look impressive, but I really like the way that the Giants offensive line played last week. And it just seemed like somehow they have like a little thing rolling there. They don't have a lot of talent advantages, but I feel like they're putting a nice they're building something there where it feels like maybe there's a future for their team. I'm not sure if it involves Daniel Jones, and I'm not sure how much longer Saquon Barkley will stay healthy, but they're definitely trending in the right direction. And I feel like in a way that was probably a little bit of a draining win for Minnesota last week. So hard for them to, to have the same kind of energy to build off of that. I think it seems harder than the Giants building off of what they did last week. And I feel like end of the season, momentum means a lot.
All right. So I'm the only one taking Minnesota. That's definitely happened before this year. Talk about another game with a lot of playoff implications. Detroit is headed to Carolina. Both of these teams pretty much have to win out to make the playoffs. So Detroit is favored by 2.5 heading into Carolina. Will, let's start out with you on this one. What are your thoughts here?
I don't know if Detroit can make the playoffs this year. There's a window for them to do it, but I think things have to go kind of right for them. And This is a team. It's they're not that far removed from being unable to win anything. But I would say I'm going to get myself in trouble with this. This is as close to a lock as you're going to see in the NFL this weekend. The Detroit Lions will win this game. I don't even think Carolina believes in itself. Like they had this sort of fantasy vision. Oh, we could still win our division, and they still might the way that division is right now. But yeah, I don't think, despite the fact that they might end up with the playoff spot, that Carolina really believes that they're any good. And you can tell from the way that they approach the game, not just playing that sort of run pass offense with, that was kind of going nowhere for a while for them until they opened it up a little bit. But the way their defense play, they're playing super vanilla and like, soft coverages and things that are just, they're not the kind of thing you do if you think you have a good team and you think you have a real playoff chance. They just played to like not get embarrassed, and they got embarrassed anyway. So give me the Lions.
All right, Lions. Korey.
Yep, give me the Lions. I think they're on a roll. I like what they do. We've said it again. We've said it all year. They play hard, even with the defense that they roll out back there. They play hard on offense. They play hard on defense. They run around. I just think that Detroit, this is a gut pick. That's really what it is. I'm going Detroit. I think the Panthers suck. That's another reason. But I don't see Detroit losing this.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it quick and simple. I love what Detroit's doing right now. They're a dangerous team with momentum on their side, and they have belief. So I think they win and cover there. Another game that has a ton of implications in the AFC now. Flip the script. Jacksonville headed to New York to take on the Jets. The battle of the former number 1 overall pick versus the former number 2 overall pick coming at you this Thursday. Jets are favored by 1 at home. And, well, Korey, I'll let you start off with this one.
I'm going the Jags. It's Trevor Lawrence has been hot on fire. He has been on a tear. And I think Zach Wilson sucks. He's looked horrible all year. He looked horrible before. He did not look good last game. He's just one of those guys who really can't do the simple things. And even though he has, 2 or 3 crazy throws a game, if you just can't keep the offense on track, then it's just really not going to work. I mean, we saw the same thing with the Commanders. Even if you get, 2 or 3 crazy plays from Carson Wentz, the ability to keep the offense moving is going to be a lot more valuable, even if you don't get the wow plays, which is why they're with Taylor Heineke right now. So I'm going with the Jags. I think Lawrence is more dynamic. I think they were this close to clipping the Cowboys last week. It's going to sting. He fumbled in OT. Fumbled. Then they got it back, took him to OT and won. And so I'm going with Lawrence here, which is the Jags, but I mean, really one of the only noteworthy players on that team. A few guys on defense, but that's his team.
Gotcha, Will.
Well, first of all, this is a Thursday night game.
Yep.
Which may have affected somebody's pick here and there. I don't know. I just feel like your Thursday night game picking the road team is you got to really believe in the road team. Secondly, it's going to be bad weather. It's not necessarily going to be that cold. It may be getting colder during the course of the game, but it's more going to be like raining and crazy wind and weather and so on and so forth. I'm not picking Jacksonville in a weather game. I think you're right that the Jets offense has really been a problem, especially with Zach Wilson running it this year, but their defense is at least as good as the Jaguars offense. So I feel like it's, in a way, it's a good matchup. They cancel out each other's strengths a little bit. So I'll take the home team in a Thursday night bad weather game. That seems like a smart play.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Will. What Jacksonville likes to do is score. What the Jets like to do is hold you under, 17 points. Gardner is going to be, shadowing someone. They're just a really good defense. They're tough to play against, and weather is going to be an issue. I like the Jets at home. It's a short week. It's a home game. As much as Zach Wilson has sucked, he has looked a little better. I think they do just enough to win this game. Look for another low scoring game. Philadelphia visiting Dallas. Let's do lightning round here. We'll start Philadelphia at Dallas. Dallas favored by 4.5. Jalen Hurts obviously is the big storyline this week. Korey, who do you have here? Dallas favored by 4.5. Excuse me.
That seems really high because I think Gardner Minshew could start in the NFL and give you better results than probably half the starters right now. I don't think Philly's that much worse without Jalen Hurts. Not because minimizing Jalen Hurts, but I think Gardner Minshew is just a very high quality backup. I kind of forgot about him when we were debating about the backups the other week.
Yep, I was thinking the same thing.
Yep. So I think he's the best backup in the league. I think the Eagles, they'll run the ball. He'll get the ball out to his receivers, and I think that defense is still top 3 easily. So I'm going Eagles, even though the Cowboys are kind of in desperation mode almost, just because of how things have turned out for them lately.
Mm-hmm. Will, what do you think here?
There's 3 reasons I'm picking what I'm picking. The first is that this is the first game that Gardner Minshew is playing since the passing of Mike Leach. He was very close with Mike Leach. He was his coach at Washington State, and the guy he credited with getting him to the NFL and everything, all the success he's had since then. And he even went to the funeral service yesterday or today.
Oh, wow.
He did not practice that day because he went to the funeral. That's one. Number 2 is they haven't actually ruled out Jalen Hurts' availability for this game.
That's true. They have.
That's number 2. Number 3, Dallas has an unbelievable ability to self-destruct when they need it most. So if I'm going to put those 3 things together, I'm taking Philadelphia in this matchup. I realize, Dallas got a couple of things. Michael Parsons, as well as yada yada. But yeah, I'm taking Philly.
What they don't have is a corner.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm taking Philly here too, mainly because Dallas is on the struggle bus. They've had 2 close games with, one with Houston, which I was shocked. That was a game. And then Jacksonville. Not that I was less shocked to a degree. Because Jacksonville's a better football team, but still, just the manner and how they lost these, barely win over Houston, lose to Jacksonville. They're just not trending in the right direction at the most important time of the year. So I like Philadelphia too, regardless of quarterback. Green Bay at Miami favored by 4.5. Will, let's get your opinion real quick here.
I'm taking Miami at home. I don't know. Green Bay is like one of those teams that you could pick them to lose every week, and your record would be pretty good this year. But then they just surprise you by playing some kind of like, really good game against a good team and winning. So I feel like they're a very hard team to predict. I'm just taking Miami because they've been on a rough stretch for sure for a little while here, and it's hard to say how much of that is just they've been playing tougher teams or what's going on with them. And last week they had the weather situation in Buffalo playing against a really great team. I feel like this is a sort of a get well week for them against Green Bay. They have some pieces. They do certain things well, but I just don't think overall Green Bay is really that good a team.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I like Miami here too. Honestly, I thought Miami played pretty good. For being in the cold weather, they played with Buffalo for the majority of that game. I think it came down to the last 10 minutes. Buffalo just kind of outplayed them and outpaced them. So I like Miami here too. They've got to get right at some point. And this could be Korey.
I'll be devil's advocate here. I'm going the Packers. And I think it's because of how small of a chance they have to make the playoffs. It's not like they're clinched or anything. It's not like they're, controlling their own destiny. Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing with house money. So I feel like if you put it like this exact scenario is perfect for Aaron Rodgers. He's the underdog. He feels like, he's got to go out and he's got to win this game. I feel like this is all the makings for Aaron Rodgers to come out and just will the Packers to victory, even if he hasn't had his greatest year and even if the team isn't that good all around. I think that he's going to will them to a victory.
All right. With that being said, let's get to our 5-star matchup of the week.
Hey, by the way, can I just Korey, real quick, Aaron Rodgers on the road in his career, just letting you know, 58-56.
Wow, I would not have thought that.
Yeah, and against I've recall now against teams with a winning record, it's even worse. It's much worse than that actually.
Wow,
grim. So yeah, he's he's the ultimate front runner, man. It's like you give him a lead at home, which is fine. I mean, it's good to know what he is. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I'm glad you included that. That's some good stuff. Pittsburgh at home taking on the Raiders. Will, let's start out with you on this one. I thought I had Pittsburgh's matchup up there. Let me scroll down.
They're up by, they're a 2.5 point favorite, I think.
Yeah, MGM has them at favored by 3 right now. So
Okay. Yeah, I think boy, it might be a little bit of a close game. There's a couple of scary things about it. One is that the Raiders, whenever the Raiders come into Steelers as an underdog, it just feels like they've outperformed that every time for years now. So it's a little scary to pick against them. I think it's the anniversary night and it's going to be the frozen tundra and it's going to be, rock pounding orgasms all around. So like, I think it's the Yinzers are going to be, I was shocked. Those fans in Carolina, I think there's obviously a lot of Pittsburgh people that have transplanted to Carolina and thereabouts. But I was just amazed how excited they were about that Steelers team they were watching. Like they were fired up. They got loud. They were swinging the towels. They got the whole thing going. And it was just like, okay. So if it was that way in Carolina last week, my guess is Heinz Field or Acrisure, excuse me. I always feel like I'm talking about a Depends ad when I say that. That they're going to be all wound up for a late night game on the anniversary of the biggest play in NFL history, basically. And Franco's getting his number retired. I just will be shocked if they ended up playing against a team with a really bad defense. As much trouble as the Steelers might have stopping the run a little bit against the Raiders, I just don't see them losing this game. I will make it 17-13 Steelers, therefore covering. Could be a little closer than that, but I think the Steelers are going to win this game.
All right, Korey.
So I'm going to spit the score, and I'm going to say 14-13 Steelers. I think we are going to win off a missed field goal in the final seconds for the Raiders. I think we'll be able to keep their run game out of the end zone. I don't necessarily think that we'll be able to stop their run game from getting them downfield. I think they'll knock in 2 field goals and get a touchdown. Like you said, the conditions have a large part to play in this. Kenny Pickett knows the stadium. He's played there for 7 years? Is it actually like 6 years?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been there for a while, so he's going to know it. I still don't think, given our offensive coordinator, and I still am not that big of a believer in our run game, that we're really going to have a dynamic offense. I could see us jumping up early, like 14-3, and Raiders slowly claw their way back, but just can't get there. But I feel like we just have too many things going for us this game for us to blow it. I hope I'm right on that.
Sorry, I forgot. If you allow me, just to mention something about this game that
Sure.
I was referring to the weather from last year against the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
And here's just to put things in perspective. Listen to these numbers, okay? The Steelers, you may recall, threw it a bunch of times last year, but couldn't really get any leverage with it at all. Ben threw 46 times, completed 24 for only 123 yards. He had a touchdown and interception. But Najee Harris, 28 attempts for 188 yards and a touchdown. But despite all those rushing yards, they only scored 14 points.
Yeah. That's
so
fair.
So it's like, okay, yes, we think you can run the ball when the weather's bad, and you'll commit to running it with 30 carries or whatever for Najee Harris. But man, that's not a good omen for scoring points. So, like I said, take the under. Now I throw it back to you, Jeremy.
Yep. Kind of in that same boat. I think Steelers win 23-17. I think there might be a little bit more give in the defenses than we anticipate. Just both these. I think Korey, I kind of envision a scenario like you said. I think we're up early, but unfortunately, Las Vegas seems to heat up when they need to. A lot of the times, it's almost every game you look at this year. Las Vegas has found a way to heat up and move the ball when they've needed to make it a close game. Whether they've won all those games is a completely different matter, but just everything this evening stands for national spotlight. There's no way in hell Pittsburgh should lose this game. There's just so much juju in the building. There's just no way on God's green earth that should happen. Except it's going to be a white Earth this week, but you get my drift.
Kenny Pickett's hands. Let us hope that's not the story, or the internet may implode.
Yeah, well, that's why he wears 2 gloves. Well, okay. So
hopefully he wears 2 gloves on each hand, because he might need it to make his hands big enough.
I think that's the best joke we've had so far this season.
I think so.
2 gloves a hand. Damn, that's a good way to end this one. Thank you for tuning in, Steelers fans, for another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Kohlman. You know me as Smith Smokin, joined by Korey Karbowsky, Korey 39, Wil Masisak, Bradshaw to Ben. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy this holiday season. Hopefully, with a great win on a night that means so much to Pittsburgh, to its very core, the play that started off this whole thing that we like to call the 6-time defending Super Bowl champions, one of the best run franchises in the league, one of the most storied franchises in the league. Go Steelers, and hopefully we get a win this Saturday.
Yeah, happy Hanukkah, happy Merry Christmas to everybody, and tune in next week for some talk about Division 3 prospects.
Division 3 prospects, there we go.
Only half joking. Go get them, Steelers.